Hi, welcome to the Gemara on Yod Amud Bet. We're starting 20 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. This is a section that has a lot of different drashot, and the overall goal of this video is to help you see how the Amoraim, how the various rabbis see these verses as connecting to the Purim story, specifically what aspects of the Purim story they want to emphasize. So Rabbi Yonatan patach la pitcha lahai parshat hamehacha. Rabbi Yonatan would open his drasha about Megillah Esther, starting from the following pasuk from Yeshayahu: "V'kamti Elohim v'gomer v'hikarti leBavel Shem v'shar benin v'nechad nu'um Hashem." And I did put the psukim down here. I'll rise up against them, meaning God is describing rising up against Bavel. He's going to cut them off and cut off name and remnant and offshoot and offspring. That's what God says he's going to do eventually to Bavel. So the Gemara says, or Rabbi Yonatan says, Shem zehaktav. Shem refers to written language. Sha'ar zelashon. That refers to spoken language. Nin zemalchut. Nin refers to kingdom. I'll cut off their kingdom. The neched zovashti. And neched refers to Vashti because Vashti was the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar, Melech Bavel. So this cutting off refers to eventually cutting off Vashti, which is obviously part of what happens in the Purim story. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani patach la pitcha lahai parshat hamehacha. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani would open his drasha with the following pasuk from Yeshayahu as well. Tachat hana tzutzi ale barosh v'tachat hasirpad ya'ale hadas. It's helpful as always to see the entire pasuk. So I have that down here. Instead of the thorn, a cypress will grow. Instead of the briar, which is also thorns, the myrtle will grow. And God, it will be for God a memorial, an everlasting sign that will not be cut off. So about that pasuk, Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says, Tachat hana tzutz, in place of the thorn, that means Tachat Haman harasha. Instead of Haman harasha, Sha'asa atzmo avodah zarah, who made himself into a form of idol worship. Dichtiv, as it says, also in Yeshayahu, v'chol hana tzutzim v'chol hana halulim. Rashi tells us that this pasuk in Yeshayahu is considered to be a reference to avodah zarah. So they'll come, the rest of them, in the rugged valleys and the holes of the rocks, upon all the thorns and upon all the brambles. But Rashi tells us that that's about different opportunities for avodah zarah. So that's how we know that Na'atzutz means avodah zarah. So that's how we know it's a reference to Haman, who made himself into a type of avodah zarah. Ya'ale barosh zem Mordechai. A cypress will come up. That's a reference to Mordechai. Shinikra rosh l'chol habesamim, who's called the head or the best of all the spices, all the fragrant things. Shnei Amar, as it says in Shmot, v'ata kachacha b'samim rosh mor dror. This is Shmot describing the Torah describing the incense that had to be brought, the ketoret. So you should take for yourself chief spices, including mor dror, which is flowing myrrh, and then other spices also. So mor dror refers to Mordechai. Umitargaminan can be translated into Aramaic as Mordechai. That's how you would say mor dror in Aramaic, which sounds just like Mordechai. Tachat hasirpad, that refers to Tachat Vashti. So instead of the briar, that's a reference to Vashti, Harisha'ah, the evil one. Bat b'no shel Nebuchadnezzar, the daughter of the son of Nebuchadnezzar Harashah, the evil Nebuchadnezzar, Shesaraf Rafidat Beit Hashem, who burned the house of God. Dichtiv, as it says in Shir Hashirim, Rafidato Zahav. It is its cover, or its top, is gold. So that's considered to be a reference to the temple. So that's what Nebuchadnezzar burned. And if you say Saraf Rafidat Beit Hashem really fast, it kind of sounds like Sirpad. So that's a reference to Vashti. Ya'ale hadas, right? Instead of that, will blossom a hadas. Zo Esther, that's a reference to Esther Hatzedeket, the righteous one. Shinikret Hadassah, whose name was also Hadassah. Shnei Amar, as it says in Esther, V'hi omenet Hadassah. It says that Mordechai took care of Hadassah, also known as Esther. Vayal Hashem l'Shem, and that the later part of that pasuk, again going back to the pasuk in Yeshayahu, Zo Mikra Megillah, that's a reference to Megillah, reading Megillah. La'ot olam, as a sign forever. La'ot olam lo yikaret, sorry, as a sign forever it won't be destroyed. Elu yumei Purim, That's a reference to the days of Purim, which Chazal tell us will not stop being celebrated even in the days of Mashiach. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi patach lapidcha lahai parshat hamechacha. Here's Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's drasha from the pasuk in Dvarim. V'haya kasher sas Hashem aleichem lahitiv etchem ken yasis lahara etchem. Just as God was sort of joyous to make things good for you, was happy to make things good for you, so too He's going to be sort of happy to make things bad for you as a punishment. That one is here. It'll come to pass. This is if you do bad things, that just as God rejoiced over you to do good, God will rejoice over you to cause you to perish. That's going to be the punishment if we don't keep the mitzvot. So then the Gemara asks, is it really true that God is happy in the downfall of the wicked? Right? If we're being wicked, we the Jewish people are being wicked, does that really make God happy? The Haktiv, but doesn't it say, isn't there a pasuk that says in Divrei Hayamim, when you go out before the guard, before the kind of person in charge of the army, they went out before the army and say, give thanks unto God, for His mercy endures forever. So what does this pasuk in Divrei Hayamim have to do with anything? The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, so Rabbi Yochanan says about that pasuk, Mipnei ma lo ne'emar ki tov b'hoda'ah zo. Why does this verse about going out before the army just say Hodu Lashem ki l'olam chazdo and not the usual Hodu Lashem ki tov ki l'olam chazdo? Because God's not happy in the downfall of Rashaim. So even when you're going out to war and you're sort of singing God's praises, you don't say anything about God being happy or about goodness. But Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan said, "My dichtiv, what is it that is said? V'lo karav zeh el zeh kol halayla." They didn't come close to one another the entire night. So this is from Shemot Yud Daled, when right before they cross, right before the sea is split and they cross, there's a pillar of fire that comes between the Egyptians and the Israelites, and they don't get close to each other all night. Somehow they're kept apart from one another all night. So what does that verse mean? Bikshu malachei hasharet lomar shira. The angels wanted to sing a song. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and God said, Ma'aseh yadai tovin bayam va'atem omrim shira. My handiwork, that my creations are going to drown in the sea, and you're going to sing a song. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says, Hu eino sas aval achirim mesis. So God doesn't get happy, but He makes others happy, right? The downfall of others does make other people happy. V'dekanami dichtiv, and this can also be seen more exactly from a verse that says, or from the fact that the verse says, Ken yasis. The verse says God will, sort of make people happy, v'lo ktiv yasus, and not that God will be directly happy. Shma mina. So yes, that's what you should learn from there. God doesn't directly rejoice in the downfall of Rashaim. Rabbi Abba bar Kahana patach lapidcha lahai parshat hamechacha. Rabbi Abba bar Kahana would open his drasha on Purim from this verse. La'adam shetov lefanav natan chochma v'dat v'simcha. A verse from Kohelet about good people, basically. That a man that seems good to God, He'll give wisdom and knowledge and joy, but He gives bad things to sinners. Then He gives him a job to do, to gather and heap up. Okay, so good people get rewarded and bad people get punished. So Zem Mordechai HaTzadik. This is a reference to Mordechai. And he'll give the sinner this job to gather things and bring things in. That's a reference to Haman. Ze Haman. That's a reference to Haman. Lathetz latov lifnei Elokim. And this positive reference, Ze Mordechai ve'Esther. This is Mordechai and Esther. Dichtiv vatasam Esther Mordechai al Beit Haman. That Esther appointed Mordechai and Beit Haman. They got what was good in the end. Rabba bar Ofran patacha pitcha lahai parshat hamechacha. Here's Rabba bar Ofran's drasha from Yirmiyahu. V'samti kisi bi'ilem v'havadati misham melech v'sarim. So this verse in Yirmiyahu, which appears here, I'll set my throne in Elam and destroy kings and princes from there, says God. So about punishment. Melech zo Vashti. So Melech is a reference to Vashti. She's going to be destroyed. Visarim Zehaman, and the Sarim who are going to be destroyed, the kind of ministers, that's a reference to Haman ve'aseret banav and his 10 sons. Rav Dimi bar Yitzchak patach lapitcha lahai parshat hamechacha. Rav Dimi bar Yitzchak's drasha comes from this verse in Ezra. Ki avadim anachnu uve'avodotenu lo azavnu Elokeinu ve'yetalenu chesed lifnei malchei paras. So this has an explicit reference to the kings of Persia. We're bondmen, but God has not forsaken us in our bondage, but has extended mercy to us in the sight of the king of Persia to revive us and let us set up the house of our God and repair the ruins and give us a fence in Judah and Jerusalem. So it's a pasuk of redemption. Ematai, when does this come to pass? Bisman Haman, at the time of Haman. It's a reference to the time of Haman when we're going to have this reward. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa patach lapitcha lahai parshat hamechacha. Here's his drasha from Tehillim. Harkavata enosh l'roshenu banu be'eshu v'mayim. So God has caused men to ride over our heads, Harkavta enosh, and we went through fire and water, but you brought us out to abundance. Totzienu l'revaya. It's going to quote the rest of the pasuk going forward. So be'esh, in fire, bimei Nebuchadnezzar harasha. That's a reference to the days of Nebuchadnezzar, the evil one who burned the house of God. Ubamayim, and water, bimei Paro. That's a reference to Pharaoh. V'totzienu l'revaya, and taking us out to plenty, bimei Haman. That's a reference to the time of Haman, to the Purim story. Rabbi Yochanan patach lapitcha lahai parshat hamechacha. Rabbi Yochanan's drasha is as follows: Zachar chasdo ve'emunato leVeit Yisrael ra'u kol avsei aretz et Yeshuat Elokeinu. Another positive pasuk from Tehillim, this one from Tzadichet. God remembered his mercy and his faithfulness toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the salvation of our Lord. So, Ematai, when does this come to pass? Or, sorry, Ematai ru'u kol avsei aretz et Yeshuat Elokeinu. When do all the people see the salvation of God? Bimei Mordechai ve'Esther. That's a reference to the times of Mordechai and Esther. Reish Lakish patach lapitcha lahai parshat hamechacha. Reish Lakish's drasha is as follows: Ari nohem v'dov shokek moshel rasha al amdal. And this is a pasuk from Mishlei with lots of animal references. As a roaring lion and a ravenous bear, so is a wicked ruler over a poor people. So Ari nohem, roaring lion, ze Nebuchadnezzar harasha. That's a reference to the evil Nebuchadnezzar. Dichtiv be, because it says about him, Allah aryeh misofcho, a lion has come out of his den. Dov shokek, a ravenous bear, ze Achashverosh. That's a reference to Achashverosh. Dichtiv be, as it says about him, va'aruchiva acharei tinyana dimya ledov. So that's a pasuk from Daniel, a reference to another beast. I'll read the translation here. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear. It raised itself up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And it was said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So the bear metaphor is there, the comparison to a dove. Vitani Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef taught as follows. Put a period there also. Elu Parsim. This is a reference. This pasuk in Daniel is a reference to the Persians. She'ochlin v'shotin kedov, who eat and drink like a bear. When we're suvulin basar kedov, and sort of stuff themselves with. Have a lot of flesh, are fleshy like bears. Umigadlin se'ar kedov, and they grow long hair like bears. The ein lahem menucha kedov, and they have no rest like a bear. We'll talk more about this in class. Moshel rasha, when a bad person rules, ze Haman, that's a reference to Haman. Al amdal, on a poor nation, elu Yisrael shehem dalim min hamitzvot. That's a reference to Israel, who were poor in the sense of not having a lot of mitzvot, not having accomplished a lot of mitzvot. Rabbi Elazar patach lapitcha lahai parshat hamechacha. Rabbi Elazar taught from the following verse: "Ba'atzalti mimech hamikarev v'shvelut yadayim yilov habayit." That in their laziness, in their slothfulness, according to this translation, the roof sinks in, the rafters sink in, and the idleness of their hands, the house leaks. So what is this a reference to? Bishvil atzlut shehaya lehem leYisrael shelo asku b'Torah na'asa sono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because of the laziness of the people who did not involve themselves in Torah, they became the enemy of God. Mach, this word mach, from yimach, ve'ein mach ela ani. There's no word, whenever it says mach, it means a poor person, or someone who doesn't have a lot of things. Shnei amar, ve'imach hu me'arkecha. In Vayikra, he can't afford the value. Ve'ein mekareh el HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this word, that in the context of the verse seems to mean the rafters or the ceiling, that only refers to God. Shnei amar, as it says in the pasuk, hamekareh b'mayim aliyotav. A reference there presumably to God's power. I'll read the translation though. Who lays in the beams of the upper chambers in the waters. So a reference to God in heaven, makes clouds, the chariot, etc. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak patach lapitcha lahai parshat hamehacha. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak taught it from the following verse: Shir hamalot l'ulei Hashem shehaya lanu yomarna Yisrael. One of the Shir hamalot prayers in Tehillim Kuf Chaf Zayin. So a psalm of ascendance. God has, maybe I don't have it on here, a song of ascents. If God hadn't, except for God having built the house, they labor in vain that build it. If it weren't for the God keeping the city, the watchman would wake in vain. So really about God's power here. I'm not sure that's the right quote though. But okay. Shir Hamal Elei Hashem Shayalanu Yomarna Yisrael. If it weren't for God, same idea. If it weren't for God, we wouldn't have anything. Lulei Hashem Shahayalanu. If it weren't for God that we have, Bekum Aleinu Adam. When a person rises up against us, Adam v'lo melech. So the verse, I think this is the continuation actually, and I didn't put it in yellow before. A person and not a king, meaning it's worse for us when a person rises up against us than a king, and that's a reference to Haman, right? Haman wasn't the king, he wasn't the oppressive king, he was just an oppressor, just an enemy, and it was worse for us than if a king had come against us, right? He was the worst possible enemy. Rava patach lapircha lahai parshat hamehacha. Rava says it from here. Bervot tzadikim yismach ha'am u'mishol rasha yanach ha'am. When the tzadikim are ascendant or ruling, people are happy, and when the rasha rules, everybody sighs. The pasuk is down there on the sheet also if you want to see it. Bervot tzadikim yismach ha'am. Ze Mordechai ve'Esther. That's a reference to Mordechai and Esther, Dichtiv, as it says in the Megillah. V'ha'ir Shushan zahala v'samecha. The city of Shushan was very happy. That's at the end of the Megillah when Mordechai and Esther are in control. Uvimshol rasha yanach am ze Haman. That's a reference to Haman. Dichtiv. V'ha'ir Shushan navocha. The city of Shushan was confused or upset. That's after Haman's decree. Rav Matna Amar Mahacha. Rav Matna said it from this pasuk. Ki mi goy gadol asher lo elokim krovim elav. Rav Ashi Amar Mahacha Ohani Salokim. So this is probably all one drasha. There's a girsa change here. It all comes from Dvarim, and the idea is we're very close to God. Ohani Salokim avo kachat lo goy mikerev goy. Right? Has God ever, for another nation, gone out and taken one nation from the midst of another nation? So according to this is a reference to the Purim story. And I know this was a long video. Your only question here is, I'd like you to just think about these psukim, these drashot really as a whole, and see if you can identify 3 themes that you see in terms of the drashot that these rabbis would give in order to introduce the Purim story. What were the themes in the story that they were picking up on? Again, I can identify at least 3, so I'd like you to do that as well. We'll stop here.